Now, how many of you cannot understand Marathi? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
We can't understand.
Okay. So 6 of you cannot understand Marathi. Fine.
Some of our friends in their way for coming here.
So some more of you cannot understand Marathi. That is fine. I will speak in both the languages, Marathi and English. So, and I'll translate as I speak, either from Marathi to English or from English to Marathi.
You can ask others who can understand English. If they understand English, all of them, it is better.
No. All of them understand English, that I know, because they are students of MA. So you cannot assume that they can't understand English, but they understand Marathi better. Okay, if I was an Arabic person, okay, then I would have assumed that you understand Arabic better than English. But since you have chosen to come here, to Maharashtra, okay, so you will have to bear with this, okay, because it is better that you study in Arabic, and it's better that my students out here study in Marathi. Okay, and we can study all the world literature in Arabic or in Marathi. English should not be medium of communication. Only because this is if you 6 were not here, then I would have spoken only in Marathi. Only because you are here, I am speaking in English and I am going to translate in Marathi. Okay. Now, let us begin with questions and answers. We'll have questions and answers at the end also. What problems do you have with Marxist approach to literature? Have you heard of Marxist approach to literature? Do you have any problems with Marxist approach to literature? Do you have any questions to ask about Marxist approach to literature? कोणाला मार्क्सवाद वगैरे तुम्ही ऐकलं असेल तर मार्क्सवादी पद्धतीनं साहित्याकडे बघणं, मार्क्सवादी सौंदर्यशास्त्र, मार्क्सवादी साहित्य विचार, याच्याबद्दल काही कोणाला प्रश्न ऑलरेडी आहेत का? आर देर एनी क्वेश्चन्स? Write it down outset. Let us begin with your questions and then I will answer. Then I will answer them and then I will perhaps elaborate on some more things.
About the lecture, just the area only related to or confined to literature, not to English and general ELT, for example, because some of us work on ELT, some maybe linguistics, some like Ahmed literature, and so on.
Look, Marxist theory of language or Marxist theories of language are there, okay, but I have not studied it much. There is a French scholar called Le Cercle. Okay, you don't write down name, first listen to me because this is very important information I am giving you. Le Cercle, Lecercle. He has written a book on philosophy of language and he is a Marxist. And of course, apart from him, there are people like you sit here, say sit like this, sit here. Apart from Le Cercle, there are people like Voloshinov and Bakhtin who have talked about language. So Marxist thought on language is there, but we are not going to talk much about it. Of course, ELT is different thing, English language teaching. Okay, Marxists have talked a great deal about language teaching and should there be English language teaching there are such fundamental questions. Normally ELT is confined to, I think you settle down and pay attention to what I am saying because this is important. So normally traditional ELT, which is the ELT of the market of the capitalist world, only deals with techniques of language teaching, how efficiently to teach. Okay, and those techniques can be more or less sophisticated. Okay, now Marxists do not talk only about techniques, but Marxists also talk about why is there a situation where English has to be taught. Are you paying attention? You pay attention because I am answering your question. Okay, म्हणजे मार्क्सवादी लोक केवळ भाषा कशी शिकवायची ह्याचा विचार करत नाहीत, तर अशी परिस्थिती का आली की सगळ्या जगाला इंग्रजी शिकावं लागतं. येतंय लक्षात? ह्याच्याबद्दल देखील मार्क्सवादी लोक विचार करतात. आणि इंग्रजी आणि स्थानिक भाषा यांच्यामधलं जे राजकारण आहे, यांच्यामधला जो सत्ता संबंध आहे, याचाही विचार मार्क्सवादी चौकटीमध्ये होऊ शकतो. English language teaching not only of how but also why, not only what is ELT but is there any need for this and what purposes it serves, how is it related to the spread of capitalism, how is it related to colonization, imperialism, globalization, what different stages of language teaching have been gone through because through these processes of birth of capitalism, colonization, imperialism and now globalization. So ELT, Marxist ELT or thought on language teaching, Marxist policies on language, etc. again is a very complicated and deep issue. But today we will be largely talking about Marxist approach to literature. Okay, so that is what we will confine. Now my question is, do you already have heard, do you already have some questions about Marxism as such and Marxist approach to literature? म्हणजे तुम्हाला ऑलरेडी काही प्रश्न आहेत का सुरुवातीलाच? आपण तुमच्या प्रश्नांपासून सुरुवात करून हे व्याख्यान देऊ किंवा मग मी तुम्हाला सांगतो. जर तुम्हाला काही प्रश्न नसले सुरुवातीला, इफ यू डोंट हॅव एनी क्वेश्चन्स देन आय विल बिगिन.
The problem is that as Marxist theory indulges in literature, we cannot find a limit area, a barrier between Marxism as a theory and literature. So this is one of the problems that we might find. Okay, so how can we elevate such problem?
What he is trying to say is, I'll first explain his question as I understood it to rest of the audience, that if we consider literature to be an autonomous discipline, an independent discipline, then Marxism by definition, by principle, does not believe in autonomy of particular fields of life. Okay, and that is why literature does not remain, or literary criticism does not remain an autonomous discipline when it comes under the purview of Marxism. So how can one save literature from Marxism? That's the question he is asking. You know, Marxism seems to be an aggressive kind of a imperialist project and poor literature which will fall victim to Marxist designs. यांचा प्रश्न असा होता की मार्क्सवाद ही एक वैश्विक सैद्धांतिक मांडणी आहे, ती सगळ्या जगाचं आकलन करण्याचा दावा करते आणि मार्क्सवादामध्ये तुम्ही वेगवेगळ्या क्षेत्रांच्या स्वायत्तता मानत नाही असा एक समज आहे, पूर्वग्रह आहे म्हणा. जर तसं असलं तर मार्क्सवादापासून तुम्ही साहित्याचं स्वायत्तता स्वातंत्र्य कसं काय वाचवाल, असा ह्या प्रकारचा हा यांनी प्रश्न विचारला. क्वेश्चन इट सेल्फ इज व्हेरी फॉल्टी. इट इज नॉट मार्क्सिझम as much as idealism, capitalism, religion, which does not respect the sovereignty and freedom of literature. No theory of literature, no aesthetics, okay, apart from Marxist, has ever respected the independence of literature as a discipline. Literature as a discipline and criticism has always been subjected to the power interests, whether they are European colonial designs, whether they are capitalist, whether they are feudal and religious. But literature has never been a sovereign field. And Marxists believe that literature will become a sovereign field. Presently it cannot be. Literature will be partisan. Capitalists create a pretense, an ideological image that literature is independent. भांडवलशाहीमध्ये एक अशा पद्धतीचा खोटा दावा केला जातो की साहित्य हे स्वतंत्र आहे, इथं प्रतिभेची देणगी असते, त्याच्यामध्ये बाकी काही विचार नसतो. साहित्याच्या याच्यामध्ये समाज किंवा इतर साहित्याच्या क्षेत्रामध्ये सगळेजण समान असतात. म्हणजे जणू काही साहित्याचं क्षेत्र चंद्रभागेच्या तीरासारखं असतं की जिथं सगळेजण एकत्र एकमेकांना मिठ्या मारू शकतात. हा पोकळ दावा आहे, हा खोटं आहे. दिस इज नॉट हाऊ एनी प्रॅक्टिस ऑफ लिटरेचर ऑपरेट्स. So, non-partisan, apolitical, neutral, autonomous notion of literature is a myth created by capitalism. It's an ideological construct. And capitalism is only one small stage in the history of mankind. We will soon transcend that phase. We'll go beyond that phase. Human society is ready to go beyond that stage. But even before capitalism, was literature independent ever? It was never independent. Either it was given the patronage by kings, by the royalty, all arts, not just literature, or it was in the service of religion, or before that it was in the service of myth and mythical worldview. So from the age of magic and myths to religion to modern scientific age, literature is serving some master or other.
But how?
Wait a minute. Let me complete this, particular exposition. That literature is creating now, in past, since the age of modernism, okay, when literature was declared to become autonomous. Literature is providing a false promise of a space and time out of time. So it represents a leisure activity. It represents an activity which, in the universal division of labor, capitalist society is the society which has the largest and most complex web of division of labor. Okay, so literature provides a particular division of labor. Now this division of labor is, once it gets an acceptance that this is the highest intellectual work that you can do, that the creativity is not encumbered by, does not have any obstacles of the material kind of this thing, then it asserts the possibility of human freedom, when in actuality, in reality, there is no human freedom. It creates an illusion of human freedom. साहित्य हे एक आभासी स्वातंत्र्य आहे, असा एक, मग त्यामुळे मग साहित्य संमेलनं असतील, ज्ञानपीठ असतील. म्हणजे आपल्याला आपण दबक्या आवाजामध्ये चर्चा करतो की हां यावेळचं साहित्य संमेलनाचं अध्यक्षपद कुठल्या राजकीय नेत्याच्या दबावाखाली दिलं गेलं, की हा पुरस्कार कसा राजकीय यांनी ठरला गेला, हे अगदी कॉमन सेन्स लेवलवरती. पण याच्याही पलीकडे की साहित्याला जे राजकारण सतत स्पर्श करत असतं, अर्थकारण जे सतत स्पर्श करत असतं, लिटरेचर इज कंटिन्युअसली बिंग कॉम्प्रोमाइज्ड बाय पॉलिटिक्स अँड इकॉनॉमिक्स अँड द social division of labor. So this entire thing is occluded, entire thing is given a lie, it is hidden from sight by the image of literary independence, freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is the sacred cow of capitalism. की आपल्याला उच्चार स्वातंत्र्य आहे, विचार स्वातंत्र्य आहे, हे भांडवलशाहीचं सगळ्यात मोठं समर्थन आहे. भांडवलशाही ही आपण सगळ्यांनी स्वीकारलेली आहे, ती आपल्यावर लादली गेली नाही आहे. नीट लक्षात द्या, इट्स अ रादर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड टॉपिक. लिटरेचर प्रोव्हाइड्स यू द इल्युजन ऑफ फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन. Okay, that in this society you can express anything. So in this society you've got freedom. And what is capitalism? Capitalism is the system. Okay, capitalism is the system where individual person or individuality of a person is fundamental for the survival of that system. If there is no individual, then you cannot employ anybody. A capitalist employs people. भांडवलदार काय करतो तर तो लोकांना कामाला ठेवतो. Capitalist employs people. Now I think you should presently just stop doing that, because you are disturbing me and you are disturbing others and yourself also. So just forget about it and pay attention to this. You can do it later. Signing can be done in the interval. So present, because this is a very complicated argument and you have to understand this. गुंतागुंतीचा हे आहे की भांडवलशाहीमध्ये काय होतं की भांडवलशाहीमध्ये तुम्ही वेठबिगारी नाहीये, गुलामगिरी नाहीये. तुम्ही लोकांना कोणाला कामावरती मुद्दामून, म्हणजे जात व्यवस्थेमध्ये जसं अमुक काम करणं भाग आहे तसं भांडवलशाहीमध्ये नाहीये. त्यामुळे भांडवलशाही स्वतःला प्रागतिक समजते. त्यामुळे आपण म्हणतो की आपली प्रगती झाली. वी कन्सिडर दॅट वी हॅव इव्हॉल्व्ड, वी कन्सिडर दॅट वी हॅव बिकम बेटर सोसायटी बिकॉज वी हॅव ended the caste system, we have ended the slavery, we have ended the bonded labor. Capitalism introduces the institution of individual freedom to choose his work. Okay? Now, it recognizes the individuality. भांडवलशाहीमध्ये व्यक्ती कामगार म्हणून स्वतःचं श्रम विकते भांडवलदाराला. द इंडिव्हिज्युअल सेल्स हिज ऑर हर लेबर टू द कॅपिटलिस्ट. सो इंडिव्हिज्युअल हॅज अ चॉईस. हॅव यू गॉट दिस? अँड दिस इज द जस्टिफिकेशन ऑफ कॅपिटलिझम. अँड द हायेस्ट जस्टिफिकेशन ऑफ कॅपिटलिझम इज दॅट इंडिव्हिज्युअल कॅन राईट अँड एक्सप्रेस व्हॉट ही ऑर शी वॉन्ट्स. Individual can vote and elect his or her own government. So political freedom, artistic freedom, and commercial and economic freedom, these are the backbones of capitalist ideology. These freedoms, की तुम्हाला व्यावसायिक स्वातंत्र्य आहे, कामाचं स्वातंत्र्य आहे, उद्गाराचं उच्चाराचं स्वातंत्र्य आहे आणि राजकीय स्वातंत्र्य आहे. आता जेव्हा आपण भांडवलशाहीचं विश्लेषण करायला लागतो आणि हे प्रत्येक स्वातंत्र्य तपासून बघतो, त्यावेळी आपल्याला ध्यानात येतं की आपल्याला राजकीय स्वातंत्र्य नाही आहे. When we start analyzing capitalism, then you realize that you do not have democratic freedom. Okay? I don't know in Yemen, do you have democracy or there is king? You have democracy and you are very proud that you have democracy. In India also we are very proud that we have democracy. But is it a real democracy? Or are they only rich people who can contest the elections?
Rich people.
Only rich people can contest. And you have to choose between one rich rascal and another rich rascal. Okay? So as Marx said about capitalist democracy, it is the choice to decide which team of bandits and thieves is going to loot you for next 5 years. Okay? Which team of or which group of thieves and bandits, thieves and dacoits going to rob you, which team of robbers is going to rob you for next 5 years. Okay? So the ideological justification of capitalism that there is democracy is false. Economic justification of capitalism that workers choose their work is false, because we know that workers are created by completely taking out of their hands their means of production. की त्यांची जी श्रमाची साधनं आहेत, म्हणजे लोहाराचं भाता, सुताराची हत्यारं, शेतकऱ्याचा नांगर, हा त्याच्याकडनं काढून घ्यायचा, त्याची श्रमसाधनं काढून घ्यायची, त्याचं जे काही थोडीफार जमीन आहे ती काढून घ्यायची आणि मग तो श्रम विकायला मजबूर होतो, त्याच्याकडे फक्त श्रम उरतात. ऑल दॅट इज लेफ्ट विथ अ मॅन इन द ट्रान्झिशन फ्रॉम फ्युडलिझम टू कॅपिटलिझम is capacity to labor for other, capacity to work for the other person. His means of production, his means of survival and subsistence are stolen from him or taken away from him. This process is called expropriation, or in Marxist terms it is called primitive accumulation. There are two results of this. One, you get an army of workers, laborers, who have got nothing but their own body to sell, and on the other hand you have got capital to invest in plants and industry, in machinery. So individual is not really free to work, but individual is forced to work for somebody else. He does not have choice between industries, because industries keep on changing according to the level of profitability. So today it may be chemical industry, tomorrow it may be engineering industry, day after it may be computer industry. So a laborer or worker has to continuously adapt to the demands of the market. Like you have to learn English because the market requires English. So the worker doesn't have a freedom. So economic freedom is also a myth. Now intellectual and artistic freedom, okay, that you were talking about. Is there intellectual and artistic freedom? If you are not free to talk about the reality, if you are not free to criticize, reflect upon the reality, then it is no freedom. There is an external confinement of your writing at the outset itself. The limits are invisible, because they are the limits at the outset. Already the subjects of literature and poetry are decided. Like, what do we say? Is there a chalk? Is there a piece? There is no chalk here. Okay, anyway, let it be. What do we say? What are the types of novel? Psychological novel, stream of consciousness novel. Okay, social novel.
Educational.
Magical realism. Okay, nature poetry. Okay, science fiction, and so on and so forth. What are you doing? You are already limiting the topics and subjects of novel writing. You are saying that you can write only about psychology. You can write only about the social conditions. You can write only about history. You can write only about science. So, right at the outset, you are saying that you are not going to criticize the way this society functions. You may record the effects of capitalism, but you are not going to question capitalism. You are not going to write a complete novel. You are never going to write a total novel. You are going to write one type of novel. This is your freedom of expression. This is the artistic freedom that you have got. Even if one is talking about Dalit literature or rural literature or feminist literature, already the type is determined even before you have started writing. Already the plot and genre has its own conventions. Already you have been confined within a particular type of writing. Okay? So, in no sense it becomes a free, totally free act of creation. Okay? This is one point. Second point is freedom, the way it is defined. Okay, and this is slightly complicated point that I am going to make. थोडासा गुंतागुंतीचा मुद्दा आहे. त्यामुळे pay little more attention. That freedom that one is talking about, freedom is defined as freedom from. Okay, these are typical Marxist terms. It is not freedom to. So freedom is essentially an idealist notion. Freedom is essentially an idealist notion. Try to understand this slightly complicated issue. Okay? What is freedom? What makes you feel free? What makes you feel that you are not bound by anything? When you are not material, when you are not talking about your hunger, when you are not talking about sex, when you are not talking about daily needs, when you are not talking about daily problems. So when you are talking about skylark, when you are talking about nightingale, when you are talking about some fantastic world, an imaginary world, and that world should be as free from body, as free from materiality, as spiritual as possible. So you are free only in paradise, only in heaven. You are never free on earth, here. Because your freedom then becomes contaminated. तुमच्या स्वातंत्र्याचा विटाळ होतो स्वातंत्र्याला. तर तुम्ही जर वास्तवाबद्दल बोलायला लागला, पार्थिव गोष्टींबद्दल, जड गोष्टींबद्दल बोलायला लागला, तर ते स्वातंत्र्य दूषित व्हायला लागतं. इट बिकम्स करप्ट. And this is the kind of freedom that is demanded out of literature. So literature is made into an ornamental thing. Okay? Literature is made into a decorative piece, spiritual thing. And then that makes literature autonomous. That makes literature independent. Okay? हा मुद्दा नीट समजून घ्या. If you have not understood it, then I'll repeat also, because it's a very important point. Okay? That the field of aesthetics, the field of art objects, is always considered to be an object out of this world. It is not of this world. It's otherworldly. It's spiritual. हे काहीतरी तरल आहे, दैवी आहे, ह्या जगाचं वारं त्याला लागलेलं नाहीये, काहीतरी अद्भुत आहे, गूढ आहे. अशा प्रकारे आपल्याला साहित्याकडे किंवा कलाकृतीकडे बघण्याची सवय लागलेली, आणि मग त्याला आपण कलाकाराचं स्वातंत्र्य असं समजतो. वी कन्सिडर अन आर्टिस्ट फ्रीडम टू बी दिस काइंड ऑफ अ व्हेरी रेइफाईड फील्ड. इन इंग्लिश द वर्ड इज रेइफाईड. गाळलेलं, गाळीव. की साहित्याचं क्षेत्र किंवा कलेचं क्षेत्र हे खूप गाळीव क्षेत्र आहे, त्याला वास्तवाचा स्पर्श नाही. इट्स अ व्हेरी kind of reified, very purified kind of a field. Have you got this? Is this clear? Now this itself, as I told you, is the state of unfreedom. This itself is the state of unfreedom. When literature is not allowed to talk about all the aspects of life, then it is already unfree. Okay? Like when you, like for example, and this is the point that George Lukács made when he criticized modernism, that Kafka, great writer, obviously a great writer, or James Joyce or Proust, very great writers, but what are they doing? And why are they acceptable? Because they have limited their claims to talking about the state of mind, talking about consciousness. Okay? That the entire world of Kafka is considered to be nightmarish world. त्या काफका एवढा महान लेखक का होतो? भांडवलशाही स्वतःवरती झालेले वार कसे पलटवते हुशारीनं, हे बघा. की काफका ह्या समाजावरती टीका करतोय, परंतु ती टीका पलटवण्यासाठी तुम्ही काय म्हणायचं? नाही नाही, तो एक भयानक भीतीदायक दुःस्वप्नांचं जग तयार करतोय. त्याचा या भांडवलशाही व्यवस्थेशी काही संबंधच नाही. देयर इज नो कनेक्शन ऑफ व्हॉट काफका इज रायटिंग विथ मॉडर्न लिगल सिस्टम, modern judiciary. Though the novels of Kafka are critical of modern judiciary, but then you call him existentialist author, absurdist author. He's got no connection with the real world. He's not talking about real world. And if a critic says that Kafka is a great existentialist writer, a great absurdist writer, then that critic is allowing the freedom of literature. If the critic says that what Kafka is writing is not a distortion of reality, it is the reality of modern judiciary, modern capitalism, then you say no, this is encroachment on artistic freedom of Kafka. That it is an art. You got this? Same thing, almost the same argument applies to Gothic novel. Is Gothic novel the novel about ghosts and vampires? Or is it about capitalists who are sucking the blood of workers? Gothic novel मध्ये जे रक्त पिणारे भूत आहेत, ड्रॅक्युला आहे, व्हॅम्पायर आहे, ते भांडुलदार आहेत, कामगारांचं रक्त पिणारे. It's not a fantasy, it's not a horror novel. It's a novel about newly emergent capitalism. You have to look at it that way. You have to look at Wuthering Heights as the novel about challenge to feudalism by capitalism. You take any literature, you cannot have literature which is sovereign, autonomous, free. And if it is so, then it will be insipid and faint-hearted. It will be cowardly and limited. It will be irrelevant for life. It will be, even as an art, it will be mediocre and useless. Which is what we find in so-called mass culture. That like मराठीमध्ये आता उदाहरणार्थ शांता शेळके बाई आहेत, सुरेश भटांसारखे लोक आहेत, हजारो गाणी लिहिली, गदी माडगुळकर असतील, लोकांनी ऐकली, हे होत गेलं, पण ठसा काय उमटला. त्या त्या काळाच्या मास कल्चरच्या लोकांना लीजर आवर, कामगारांचा जो रिकामा वेळ आहे, फावला वेळ आहे, त्याच्यामध्ये त्यांनी स्वतःच्या परिस्थितीचा विचार करू नये म्हणून त्यांना काही करमणूक पुरवली जाते की त्यांनी संघटना बांधू नये, ट्रेड युनियन बांधू नये, कामगार चळवळी उभ्या करू नयेत म्हणून करमणुकीची साधनं रेडिओ, टेलिव्हिजन सारखी उपलब्ध करून देतात. ऑल द मीन्स ऑफ एंटरटेनमेंट आर रॉबिंग the workers' leisure time, because in the leisure time the worker has got time to reflect on his or her condition of life. आता ह्याच्यासाठी खाद्य पुरवणारे काही साहित्यिक असतात. There are some writers who write for people, write for masses. And they create this category of free art, independent art, decorative ornamental art. And that category, the art of that category is bad art. The art of that category is hardly the art which even one generation will remember. Okay, so this kind of, excessive formalism in art, there are problems with it. Okay, have you got this? Is this clear? Okay, so that is the long answer to your very short question. Now to go back to what we have to do in this class, and another half an hour or so remains, is I'll just take you through some major trends in Marxist thought which have got some things to say about art and literature and ideology. Okay, so there's some people that you can use. All of you are MPhil students and you may graduate to do your PhDs also. So, if we talk broadly about Marxist literary critical tradition, की एक मार्क्सवादी साहित्य समीक्षेच्या परंपरेबद्दल आपल्याला बोलायचं झालं तर आपल्याला काही विचारवंत, काही विचार असे 10-15 एक अप्रोचेस आहेत मार्क्सवादाच्या आत. There are some 10 to 12 approaches within Marxism. They are different from each other, but we can talk about these approaches, and you can take one of those approaches for your study. The first approach, which is now historically outdated, is that of what we call our approach of social realism, or literature as mirror to society. Okay, this was the approach of Stalinist aesthetics in Russia, especially under the leadership of Zhdanov, and sort of considering that literature is mimetic and it imitates social reality. Now this is a very popular Marxist socialist approach. Even in Maharashtra, most of the socially committed literature feels that literature has to reflect society, and if literature reflects society with as much rawness as possible, then it is considered to be socially committed literature, great literature. Okay, so it's an approach which is critically discredited but socially most enduring. It has endured even in 21st century. की साहित्य हे तुम्हाला समाजाच्या सगळ्या दुःख, यातना, अन्याय ह्याचं प्रतिबिंब, याचा आरसा आहे. येतं लक्षात. आणि तसं जर ते साहित्य नसलं तर त्याला समाजाशी काही देणं घेणं नाही. असा एक मायमेटिक सॉर्ट ऑफ एरिस्टॉटेलियन मार्क्सिस्ट अप्रोच टू लिटरेचर इज मोस्ट, what should we say, popular literature. In England, the person who was a staunch follower of this approach was Christopher Codwell. He was one of the early Marxists, very young, promising Marxist who died at the age of around 28. 28 वर्षेच बिचारा मेला in war. Okay, and a very creative, intelligent kind of a person. But he had that kind of very simplistic notion of, literature's connection with society. It was very simplistic. Then, as a reaction to this mimetic approach, there were 3-4 currents in Western Marxism. Okay, simultaneously. One was the thought of George Lukács and his students. Another was thought of Bertolt Brecht. Third was the thought of Theodor Adorno, and fourth was thought of Gramsci. So these were 4 reactions to the Orthodox Soviet perspective on literature. Okay, Orthodox perspective was marked by Stalin, Gorky, and Zhdanov. Okay, so now we will talk in brief about these 4 approaches to literature, 4 ways of understanding literature. Okay, the philosophically quite sophisticated, because there was as much Hegel in it as much as Marx, is Lukács' approach, where he looks at literature not as a direct reflection, but literature as a sort of a mediated, and the concept of mediation is very important out here. Again, slightly this is going to be tough, because I'll have to give you background a bit in philosophy also, but literature is a sort of a, what should we say, a social act, not just an individual act, and the entire society, as it were, expresses itself, but this expression is not a direct expression, but a kind of an expression which is mediated by the tradition of literature. It is mediated by the kind of consciousness that is created. Lukács, I'll give you examples of this process of mediation. Lukács's first famous book, his first book was Soul and Form, but the second book, before he turned Marxist, is called Theory of Novel. And there he describes the tradition of narration from epic to novel, okay, in a way which parallels the history of Europe, economic and social history of Europe. एपिक किंवा महाकाव्याबद्दल ल्युकाश असं म्हणतो की महाकाव्य जे आहे त्या महाकाव्यामध्ये माणूस आणि निसर्ग, माणूस आणि समाज याच्यामध्ये एक अभंगत्व होतं, हे दुभंगलेलं नव्हतं, हे एक होतं. म्हणजे आकाशातले तारे हे समाजामध्ये ज्या घटना घडत आहेत त्याचा आरसा होते, जणू काही डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन होतं. म्हणजे तिकडं तारा निखळला की इथं कोणीतरी मरणार आहे, उदाहरणार्थ साधी गोष्ट. किंवा माणसाचं त्या निसर्गाशी एकरूपत्व होतं आणि माणसाचं माणसाशी पण एकरूपत्व. सो एपिक इज द फॉर्म वेअर सोसायटी इज युनायटेड and nature and society are living in harmony with each other. He's talking about Greek epics, of course. He's talking about European tradition. Whereas philosophy and tragedy, because tragedy and philosophy are parallel to each other, are the first record of break between man and man, where interest of individual go against the interest of the society, where the society goes against nature. And novel, which is a prose epic, about novel Lukács says it is the epic of a man who has lost home, the homeless man, epic of a homeless humanity. That when you are a complete outsider, and that's why he takes the example of Don Quixote of Miguel de Cervantes, that when you are a complete outsider, when you are living in a fantasy world, moving from one place to another, then you would write a novel. So novel is always the novel of an outsider, person who looks at the society from outside. कादंबरीमध्ये पूर्णपणे कादंबरीचा जो हिरो आहे त्याचा समाजाशी असलेला जैविक संबंध तुटलेला आहे, पूर्णपणे तुटलेला. तो त्याकडे बाहेरून बघतोय, क्रिटिकली बघतोय. सो नॉवेल इज ऑलवेज सोशली क्रिटिकल. नॉवेल हॅज अ डिस्टन्स फ्रॉम सोसायटी. सो दॅट्स हाऊ वी लुक्ड ॲट. नाऊ इन हिज हिस्टॉरिकल नॉवेल also, he repeats when he has become a Marxist. Lukács has become a Marxist. He describes 3 phases of novel. And in the first phase, the novel is, as it were, socially responsible. So when you are talking about, say, Joseph Fielding or Sir Walter Scott or Victor Hugo, these are the, or Tolstoy, these are the novelists who are responding to society and they are in dialogue with society. And they have got the entire kind of, they understand the historical movement of the society. When Marxists basically, one thing I have to tell you is Marxists believe in the dynamical society. For Marxist, society is never a stable thing. Society is always unstable and always moving from one stage to another. की समाज हा सतत संक्रमणाच्या अवस्थेतून जात असतो असा मार्क्सवादाचा विश्वास आहे. आणि मार्क्सवादाने हे सिद्ध केलेलं आहे. समाज हा कधीही स्थिर नसतो. देर इज नो फंडामेंटल ह्युमन नेचर, देर इज नो फंडामेंटल फॉर्म ऑफ सोसायटी. सोसायटीज आर ऑलवेज हिस्टॉरिकली डिटरमाइंड. समाज हा नेहमी ऐतिहासिकदृष्ट्या बांधलेला असतो. हे मार्क्सवादाचं मूळ म्हणणं आहे. येतंय लक्षात? तर ल्युकॅसच्या दृष्टीनं अ गुड नॉव्हेल is the novel which can mark a particular stage of history, which knows the historical stage through which the society is going. And that is what Victor Hugo or Tolstoy or Sir Walter Scott could do in their novels. For them, society was dynamic and changing. And it was going through the transition from feudalism to capitalism. Whereas in the realist and naturalist novel, especially naturalist novel of Zola, what you have is the novel which has considered human beings as natural animals, as natural beings, not as social beings, not as historical beings. So the entire naturalist novel is in a way the novel of stasis, novel of stability. Okay? And then the modernist novel of Kafka and Proust and Joyce, etc., is the novel which becomes trapped in psychology. So this is the process where the novel is going from outside to inside. This is a progressive introversion of the novel. That is the thesis of George Lucas. Okay, so now here the simple mimetic model is abandoned, and novel is looked at rather than as mirror of society, as symptom of society. Okay, now the artistic style itself gets affected, not just the content of the novel, but the artistic style itself gets affected by what is happening in the form itself gets affected. So it's formally far more sophisticated kind of criticism that Lukács is expounding. The second reaction to mimetic model was that of epic theatre of Bertolt Brecht. Now he refused the role of being the reporter of society. He said that a dramatist is not obliged to just show the reality and make you feel that you belong to that reality, but a dramatist should discuss with the audience critically what the reality is. So reality should be presented not as reality but as a problem. Okay, that is what Brecht does. So in other dramas, when you go to see other drama in a theatre, the lights are off and only the stage is lit. Okay, so you feel completely that you lose your own being, existence, awareness, and you identify with the characters on the stage. In Bertolt Brecht's theatre, lights were on. You were allowed to eat, smoke while watching because you were continuously aware that this is a drama. तुमचं हे भान जे आहे की समोर नाटक चालू आहे हे तो विसरून देत नव्हता. नाटक चालू असताना पात्र नाटकाचा खेळ थांबवायचे आणि तुमच्याशी गप्पा मारायची, नाटकाबद्दल चर्चा करायची. While the play was on, the actors would stop the play in between and discuss the problems of the play with the audience. So this entire mimetic hallucination that there is reality on the stage, from Aristotle's, that you have to get sympathetic and empathetic understanding of the problem. So instead of sympathy and empathy, you should be critical of what is happening on the stage. Because stage is a political space where you discuss the problems of society. So that is another Marxist approach, Marxist way of looking at art. That art is a place where you have certain distance from society and from itself, and where you can discuss critically the issues. The third thinker that I'm talking about is Adorno and Horkheimer. Adorno, Theodor Adorno of Frankfurt School, and his friend Horkheimer, Max Horkheimer. And the way they analyze two types of art. One is they analyzed the mass culture. In those days, LP records, phonograph, and radio, and also there was beginning of television. So Adorno, he was a great music expert. He was one of the foremost music expert of his times. So he discusses music, he discusses early cinema, television and radio, and also of course newspapers, etc. He calls this kind of an art an industrial art. It's a art industry, it's culture industry, that's what he talks about. And where art is fetishized. There is an essay by Adorno called Fetish Character of Music. Just as in capitalist world, commodities are fetishized. Instead of the labor that has gone into the product, you look at the product itself. You don't see the human beings who have made that thing. The thing itself becomes more valuable than the human beings who have made it. So just as there is fetishization of commodity, there is fetishization of art. The art stops being an art and it becomes a sort of thing to do, a ritual. मी बघा आता तुम्हाला असं की लेटेस्ट सिनेमा नाही पाहिला, लेटेस्ट गाणं नाही ऐकलं तर तुम्हाला चुकल्यासारखं वाटतं. म्हणजे जणू काही त्या सामूहिक विधीमध्ये तुम्हाला सहभाग घ्यावाच लागतो कंपल्सिव्हली. आणि ऑब्व्हियसली हे इट्स अ अनक्रिटिकल पार्टिसिपेशन इन द फेटिश व्हॅल्यू ऑफ आर्ट. So you are not the learned, critical appreciator of art as much as the consumer of ready-made art products. Okay. Of course, he talks in great depth about these issues, and I do not have time to go into such depth. But the next thing he talks about art is in his great book called Aesthetic Theory, which is a very complicated book. And in that he talks about the fractured nature of modern art. That modern art is the art of dissonance. Modern art is not the beautiful art. I mean, normally one expects that art creates beauty. But in modern society, art cannot create beauty. Beauty can no more be the goal of art. Consonance and harmony cannot be found in modern art. because our lives themselves are dissonant lives. आपली आयुष्यच इतकी कर्कश आणि दुभंगलेली अशी आहेत की कलेमध्ये तुम्हाला ती युनिटी आणि हार्मनी आता यापुढे येऊ शकत नाही. म्हणजे युनिटी ऑफ फॉर्म अँड कंटेंट, फॉर्मल युनिटी, सिंगल थीम, सिंगल प्लॉट. म्हणजे अजून देखील आपण साहित्याच्या याच्यामध्ये सहज तुम्हाला असा प्रश्न विचारला जातो की याचा सेंट्रल कॅरेक्टर कोण आहे, याचा प्लॉट सांगा, फॉर्मल हे कसं आहे रचलेलं आहे, व्हॉट इज द प्लॉट, व्हॉट इज द सिंगल कॅरेक्टर. in good art you cannot have that. My plot is no more the binding principle. It cannot be if it is a good art. I mean, Adorno was arguing against Lukács. You have to understand this. I mean, I will not go into the intricacies of that entire debate. But what he says is that now the novel cannot offer you the total understanding of the world. Novel will be fragmented, will be incomplete necessarily. It will be broken. It cannot be bound by one character, one heroic action, one plot, one unity, one theme. You cannot have themes now. Okay. So, in short, Adorno is saying something like this. The fourth person that I mentioned, and he was not a literary critic, but he was a political activist, theorist, a revolutionary called Antonio Gramsci. But his thought has shaped several literary critical disciplines. So, with Antonio Gramsci, Marxism itself sort of, advances to a new, what should I say, more subtle, more sophisticated, more nuanced understanding of history and society. Because for Antonio Gramsci, the socio-economic structure of society is not the only reality of the society, but also cultural, political, psychological, religious. All these aspects of society are quite important. Though in the final analysis, socio-economic structure is more important. But all these other aspects are quite important. And out here, you have, in all this field, psychological, social, cultural, religious, you have a sort of struggle for domination, struggle for power. म्हणजे ही जी सगळी क्षेत्र आहेत माणसाची, फक्त आर्थिक क्षेत्र नाही, कारण मार्क्सवादामध्ये आर्थिक क्षेत्राला अनन्यसाधारण महत्व आहे, ग्रॅमशीला ते मान्य होतं. पण आर्थिक क्षेत्र असं आपल्याला वेगळं काढता येत नाही समाजाच्या इतर अंगातून, आणि काढलं तर ते अमूर्त बनतं, ॲबस्ट्रॅक्ट बनतं, ते कॉन्क्रीटनेस सगळा घालवतो आपण त्याच्यामध्ये, असं ग्रॅमशीला ध्यानात आलं होतं. त्यामुळे इकॉनॉमी और इकॉनॉमिक अनालिसिस और रिड्यूसिंग एवरीथिंग टू इकॉनॉमिक अनालिसिस is not grasping the social reality in its concreteness. And to grasp the social reality in its concreteness, you have to understand how the power struggle is played in each field. And it will be played in various ways, various complicated ways. There is no one way in which it will be played. There will be crisscross of interests and relations. So this entire complexity of cultural field, Gramsci talked about. Okay? And that theory becomes useful in analyzing various what should we say, various literatures of various nations and periods. Okay, that how kind of in literature also, in the field of literature also, a sort of battle for power is being played, which is not purely reflective of the economic reality, but independently in literature, there is a cultural battle for cultural supremacy. There is a battle for literary supremacy, creation of new canon. एक नवीन साहित्यिक परंपरा किंवा साहित्याच्या इतिहासाचं पुनर्लेखन करणं, परंपरांचं परत एकदा एक मॅपिंग करणं. यू हॅव टू रिमॅप द ट्रॅडिशन्स फॉर बिल्डिंग द न्यू काइंड ऑफ social struggle. So that is the task Gramsci talks about. Now there are many other thinkers like Althusser. I have not talked about post-Marxist thinkers like Laclau and Mouffe. I have not talked about Frederick Jameson, or I have not talked about people like Stuart Hall and Raymond Williams. But that is going to take long time talking about all these people. Okay, so perhaps some other time we will talk about. At present, if you've got any, because now the time is over, so if you have got, I have taken you to 1940s in the history of Marxist literary theory. Up till 1940s I have covered the area. So if you have got any questions about it, you are free to ask. Thank you.
Literature has specific purpose, aims for people. Maybe play, novel, drama, whatever it is. But the same thing that you can find here. For example, in Animal Farm, for example. Maybe what you can grow to have period time grow. The same thing about the Marx theory, about the political, as you have said,